Yapily is a fintech company that's seen some strong growth in the past few years. In 2024, their live annual recurring revenue increased by 51%. And in Q1 of this year, they were profitable in every month since then. They've also just signed a huge enterprise customer, Google. In this podcast, I was able to get under the hood of what enabled this growth since 2021, what the team has learned along the way, and the role of marketing in enabling that growth. If you don't know what Yapily does, they are an open banking infrastructure platform that connects their customers to thousands of banks across Europe, allowing them to access financial data and initiate payments. To date, they've raised $69.4 million in funding and employ over 200 people worldwide. And in this episode, I get to deep dive with two people from their marketing team. Gregory Aubert, their head of marketing, and Edwin Pauza, demand generation leader at Yapily. Full disclosure, Yapily is also a client of ours, and we've been working together for the past year and a half on their content. And it's an absolute pleasure working with the team. So yeah, I'm really excited to go even deeper in this episode. Specifically, we talk about Yapily's marketing journey to date, why they are data-driven and how this impacts their marketing. How do they get Google Ads to work so well for them? Why consistency across channels is what works really well, and their future marketing plans. Enjoy this episode. I'm really excited to have both of you here, Greg and Edwin. Thanks so much for jumping. I'm going to start with getting straight to it. So Yapily recently published their financial results of 2024, and they're really positive. So congratulations. And I know it was a really big year for you, so I'm excited to get into it. And I know 2025 is a very big year. But yeah, I'd love to get into the marketing behind that. Compare 2024 to 2021. What's changed? I know a lot has. What do you think was the role of marketing to get Yapily 2021 to Yapily 2024 and 2025?
Thank you for the congratulations. Yeah, indeed, it's been an amazing year, as you said. I mean, profitable in 2025. We just signed Google, so both are like massive milestone for us. I think in terms of marketing, I've only been at Yapily for 2 years, so I think Edwin will be able to share you more insight for back in the days and so on. But I think for me, like one of the observation is like kind of moving away from kind of growth at all costs, like not focusing on leads. We need to generate leads, but more about how can we build like a sustainable, but also scalable kind of marketing growth kind of engine. As a business, we are very performance-led, data-driven. And I was like, to be fair, when I joined Yapily, very impressed by the quality of the data. But that means that we can be very return on investment focus. So we really consider every activity that we do. It's a campaign or even onboarding a new agency or a new supplier. What's going to be potentially the return on investment that we do? So that's one thing. I think the other thing is as a team, we are a fairly lean team. Our marketing team is not very big. So that kind of like push us to be super efficient in everything we do. And I think that's probably the key, right? And by doing that means that our focus as marketer is really about, straight to the point, like what's the pipeline, what are the opportunity and the deals that we can generate as a marketing team. So it's that very focused mentality on like marketing is not like, as when you say sometimes the painting and drawing department, but like it's a revenue driver for the business. I think one of the things that I've observed here, and like maybe it sounds a bit cliche, but a lot of time you always talk about friction between sales and marketing. And I think one thing that we, like at least what I've seen since I've joined, we do very well is alignment with the sales team. So the SDR team and the marketing team, we work very closely with the sales team. I think even more than that, like we build our kind of commercial strategy together. So like the marketing and sales strategy is actually like one strategy that we build together. Obviously, we then go into more of the specific, but I think that has been essential. So it's like that collaboration element with the sales team. So we act as a almost kind of one revenue engine for the business.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you. I think when we first started talking like about a year and a half ago, I was also very impressed with the really comprehensive spreadsheets and lots of numbers in there, which I love because it really helps understand external people also understand a lot better what's working and what isn't.
I'm sure Edwin has a more concrete example of that because he's been here for quite a while now, of it doing differently as well. But
I was actually going to say, just before I go to Edwin, like what's interesting though is that you are very performance driven, but you do appear in a lot of, like your PR is very strong still, there's a lot of brand awareness for Yapily as well. I mean, I feel like most people in the fintech industry do know Yapily. And if you look up any list, top open banking providers, whatever, Yapily is always on that list. So that's something I want to talk about as well later, how you've done that balance. But yeah, Edwin, I'd love to hear your perspective. You've been there for over 4 years now, right? So how have you seen the marketing team transition?
Since 2021, I think what we know the best and what we learned is learn myself and gain much deeper understanding is our ideal customer profile of who are we actually going after. Because if you do reach out to them and get through to them, our message will resonate with them. And 2021, it was a lot more vague, generic. Let's reach out to every payments company across Europe. But how many companies are there in total? Being specific and develop that stronger grasp of key markets, helping us to target and be effective. But really, what I think it also comes down to is we improved and standardized our internal process. So it might be great, okay, let's reach out to every, let's just say, payments company across Europe. Even if you have a list, because it's not that difficult to get a list of every fintech company across Europe, across the globe. But how do we reach in an efficient, quick manner and look at the ROI? It required internal processes, ensuring everyone understands what they're doing and establishing those processes and training our staff from sales development, senior sales across commercial. We had to customize our CRM using Salesforce and through trial and error. And there are many things we implemented, and maybe 6 months down the line, I speak with our Salesforce admin, and he's getting frustrated because he now has to remove it and change it. But it was constant trial and error so that it does not introduce friction of how our sales development and our senior sales work, and to make that as efficient as possible. So we once get the target, we tee it up, and we go directly to them and get that quick ROI. And I think this has been it's that internal process, integration, trialing what works, what doesn't, and nailing it. And now we have in our go-to-market strategy, we can do that efficiently.
Yeah, so getting really good at Salesforce. And how do you, understanding the ICP better, how do you think that's improved the marketing? Like, how do you think that's translated into better marketing?
From our message to who we choose to target, how we do the outreach and how well it resonates. Maybe back then we might have to target 250 prospects, let's say from 50, 60 companies. And now we might actually have to select a list of 20 companies. 40, 50, 60 prospect has become a lot more efficient in that process. So our kind of ROI, what resonates with the wider market, because we know what works and what has become a lot more efficient. And since 2021, because key staff have stayed with the company, we learned that we have that knowledge, know-how, and it was not lost along the way.
Yeah, no, amazing. And so apart from understanding your ICP a lot better, I mean, I think it sounds like also iterating and testing, as you said, that was a big part of it. Do you feel that often at other companies, maybe people aren't willing to like test and experiment so much? Like why you think often that doesn't work out so well for certain companies? Like what do you think is necessary to really understand basically your ICP better?
I think staff have to be comfortable at failing, and the senior leadership have to provide room and provide space to fail and not to feel bad about failing. Failure should be seen as good because you're trying, right? But you just fail a lot of things and your leadership is telling you off and we don't have their trust. You're afraid to test. But it's constant trial and error that you eventually succeed. And then once you succeed, it's something you can kind of optimize what works and leave out what doesn't. And just me being for 4.5 years, it allowed us to constantly do the trial and error from messaging, from channels, from paid advertising to organic, to different markets, different personas. And we are still continuously learning.
Yeah. Are there any experiments that didn't work out maybe, or failures that you can share? Anything that you're like, oh man, this just did not work at all?
So there have been many experiments that did not work out, too many to list individually. And I was kind of thinking that I think the main theme that comes out is not following through to the end and giving up too early. often everybody comes out with great, fantastic ideas. As they say in the startup industry, ideas are kind of cheap. People get excited. 5, 4, 8 people get together and everybody gets really excited. And then Friday, Monday comes, and then different priorities come up and you just give up easily. So a key learning is kind of, and a key account. So if you know your ICP and those big accounts, you never give up, because one campaign fails, one message doesn't resonate. You don't give up on a large company, right? There's only so few of these decacorn enterprises. You say, oh, I reached out to 5 people in a corporation of 10,000. It doesn't work. So if one message or one campaign did not work, if it's just a touch point, then we're going to try it with our ICP again, so till it works, so that we get through to the right person. And I think this, they have failed many times, but one thing that they have not given up is the accounts, because we know our ICP. The company is right, but the message might not be, or the individual at the company not right.
Yeah, exactly. And in terms of like, are there any specific campaigns or specific efforts that you have seen maybe made like a strong impact over the past few years? Like anything specific, or maybe a PR, like a specific press release or announcement that made a difference?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think for us, what have made a massive difference, I think the last 2 years, I think it's more about the consistency across all the channels that we've made and trying to achieve. For instance, like Edwin is doing an amazing job with everything paid search. We've got a very robust engine on that perspective. We started to work with you guys from an SEO perspective, where we had like a lot of gaps, which now is kind of turning into kind of ChatGPT optimization and so on. And I think the fact that we've got that kind of consistent approach across multi-channel, and then on the top of that, we are scale up. We don't have like huge marketing budget, right? So we can't really afford kind of brand campaigns. So literally all brand campaign is those kind of announcements and so on. And if you put that on the top of this, then that means we've got like a very kind of refined engine. And we are seeing it a lot, even more and more recently, where we can see a deal that we closed, like started from an impression on clicking on one of our ads on LinkedIn, then kind of came back to a website, then came back again on search, clicked on an ad, converted, or did a research on ChatGPT, then got captured by Google Ads. So I think it's the fact that we've been very consistent across all channels, and we're not like put all our eggs into one, like let's say, oh, we're just going to do PR, or we're just going to do paid search, has really helped us to build a very kind of sustainable kind of inbound channel. So I think it's not about like just like one magical marketing campaign. I think it's a consistency that actually compounds our results. And I think, yeah, as I said, like we see that more and more in terms of attribution and where all kind of deals close come from. And it's very multi-touch.
That's really interesting. Yeah, because I was going to ask, as I mentioned earlier, like you, in terms of you're maybe more performance driven and all that and have a lean marketing team and budget, but you still, Yapily seems to be everywhere. Whenever open banking is mentioned in the UK, Yapily always turns up. How do you think that happened? Is that just from being kind of early to the market, or that consistency? What do you think contributed to that?
There's a few things. I think like a few years ago, I think we used to spend a lot of money into PR. That time, I think it really helped to build the brand. Then also from open banking perspective, like we've been in open banking since the start, right? So we're one of the first company. So there is that consistency. I think we have also like a very clear positioning in the space. Like at the end of the day, there's not that many players. Like we position ourselves as infrastructure first platform. We are like the backbone of it, and basically other business build open banking application on the top of us, right? So I think we have a very clear positioning that kind of set us apart a little bit as well.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is this has also translated into, in terms of the work that we're doing, what we're seeing in LLMs. Yapily has really good visibility in LLMs, and we're publishing an article on this, so it's public knowledge, but you have good visibility, and we think this is partially due to that, basically, that you're the strong PR that you did a few years ago. Because basically, as I said, like on every top X list that's written by someone else for the UK, Yapily's always mentioned, and I think that's benefited in LLMs as well. So it's quite an interesting, like later impact of doing something many years ago. Attribution and hard to measure, but is an interesting
Yeah,
option there.
it's again, it's consistency. A lot of those things as well. They can be based on your revenue and so on, and how you grow. And we've been growing steadily, like doing very well for the last few years. So as open banking grows as an industry as well, like we naturally grow and so on. So
yeah, nice. I want to talk about paid ads as well, because in my experience, when we start working with fintech companies, I always find it's hard to get it to work. Basically, it's tough because fintech financial services is an expensive industry. CPCs are high. It's like multi-month sales cycles, so attribution is difficult. And when we started working with Yapily, like your paid ads was really like advanced. And Edwin, you've written a LinkedIn post that said that your responsibilities were once described as running a world-class performance marketing program. So I want to ask you, like, what would you say is key to running like a world-class performance marketing program in fintech?
So I was tasked with that. I did not come up with a world-class performance marketing program. So I think it really, world-class depends how you define it. For me, I have spent probably the last few years sometimes to just think about like, what do I truly mean? Like it could be seen as almost arrogant, especially if I would call it myself. But for me, it's about building from zero, setting up right process systems and add structure to drive measurable impact. Or focus is UK, European markets. So some say it's regional, it's not world-class, global. But we also work at global companies entering, especially our kind of market. Payments are international by nature. So you have to think beyond borders on global companies that would want to work with us, with what we offer. And it's also about creating demand, not just capturing it, understanding how our audience thinks, searches. Real performance is not just about clicks or impressions. It's actual revenue. So you mentioned performance marketing. So it's actual revenue and money in a bank, being really brutally honest with yourself and holding yourself accountable, always challenging yourself with deeper KPIs. It's so easy to say, okay, I generated 100,000 impressions and 1,000 clicks or so. That would be a 1% click-through rate. That probably wouldn't be world-class. How many leads stand into meetings? So just not legs, but okay, say leads. Well, I bought you so many leads, but he would say, commercial team would say, okay, but you didn't have meetings, none of them just booked. It could be bots, right? But then it's okay, you generated meetings, but you could say, well, these meetings were not good quality. So how many of them are real prospects that he can sell to, companies that have money? Just yesterday during a meeting, I ended up challenging one of the SDRs saying, do they actually have money? Why did we put them as an SQL? But we can't afford this. How can we sell to them? And how many opportunities, and most importantly, deals won? Because the company has raised the money from investors and we decide to deploy that on one of the channels, performance marketing. If we spend that money on a channel, we want to show return on investment, because otherwise, just the goodwill and brand marketing will not keep the lights on. Some previous marketing managers that I work would use, you need to keep the lights on in a building to keep going. So it's about measuring, I think, to be world-class performance marketing is holding yourself accountable, being brutally honest with yourself. And so what am I doing in this company? Is it bringing positive ROI? And looking at as well commercial team impact, is marketing keeping the sales development, the senior sales busy with quality opportunities? What's my role is to support them and to provide them with opportunities. And I think world-class marketing is not about awards, it's about efficiency and outcomes. And I have seen before the 2022, then money was not an object, especially in kind of fintech space. Okay, growing 3x a company, but if your investors gave you huge amounts of money, so you spent 20x resources, but you grew by 3x. Now, by outsider, you could say you're doing fantastic because you grew a company by 300%. But what if you spent millions on it? And I think it's about true marketeers, good quality world-class marketeers are the ones that grow the company, but with fewer resources. So the growth might not be as phenomenal, you won't be as everywhere. But if you manage to do with tiny resources, you're doing a fantastic job. Because if somebody just kind of chucks money at the wall and it grows and it's like, oh, look, they're doing
Anyone can do it.
There's a huge loss, right? So Yapily is a profit-making company as of this year. So I think it's ultimately about achieving greater growth multiples when resources available. And that's what performance marketing becomes world-class. I think it does have to be that kind of angle that you're dealing globally with global companies and being able to attract them, but achieving that ROI and being ability to set up from ground zero, fully implementing. And it's not just one channel, it's how it feeds the wider theme. That's how I would define it.
Yeah, it's about being resourceful. Ultimately, it's about understanding what you've been given and knowing how to use what you have. Would you add anything to that, Greg?
Yeah, Edwin is spot on. I mean, I have to say, like, what he's put together in the last 4 years, super impressive on how efficient it is and how it's performing. We had months where like, oh, we're not sure it's performing that well, and being persistent and optimize it. It's still like one of our key channel. Like we constantly see deal coming through, and they're not necessarily small, right? Some of them are very meaningful as well. So the return on investment in paid ad is very good. I think for like on one of your points around why sometimes does it fail, like from my own experience, a lot of time in fintech, people use it as a way to fix pipeline. Like we don't have any pipeline. What can we do? What's the quick answer to that? Or let's just spend more money into ads. And as an issue, you probably start to spend too much too quickly. You don't give yourself the time. And I think Edwin mentioned it, like he started that program 4 years ago. So imagine the level of optimization that has gone through this. I think it's about you need to have the time and focusing on the quality. And I think, I don't know, Edwin, if I can't remember if you mentioned it and so on, but like things like we fully integrated or with Salesforce to optimize your ads and so on. And that's some of the stuff like that are super essential and help you to perform. But it does take time, so you need to be patient.
Yeah. And if another fintech is listening to this and they're trying to figure out paid ads, because as I said earlier, like I feel like it's tough in fintech, and it sounds like it takes maybe years to really get it to work. Well, what do you think maybe other fintech companies are not doing right, or what do they need to be doing to really make the most of paid ads?
Or it could be what they shouldn't be doing. You don't need to start running paid advertising if you don't have product market fit, because so many early startups have kind of targets to hit, but if there is no product market fit, then they check everything trying to hit those targets. But you really, like going back to the start of this conversation, then you start discussing the ICP and the pain points, the use cases, like really defining, and that's when you can start scaling, because otherwise you need to start experimenting. But I think paid advertising has to come in when you hit that, what it works with pain point use case, and start scaling. If they're not focused on their core markets, ICPs, and it's not established, it becomes too broad and unfocused targeting, and then they end up blaming the marketeer, they end up blaming the paid ads. But it comes down to, sometimes the company is struggling, sometimes the product is not working, sometimes the product was designed with like a theory, but actually if you look at the kind of statistics, once a paid ad's running, it just doesn't resonate with your audience, because maybe your audience are an ICP, or the product that was created was not, it looks amazing on theory, but is there a demand for it? So I think, it has to be grounded in data, ICP, and lack of internal understanding or pressure from leadership kind of forces as kind of grasping onto anything that's out there.
Yeah, so did you start doing paid ads at Yapily like 2022? You didn't do it right when Yapily started. Is that also what you did at Yapily?
2021, I started the early ads, and it was pretty much a blank slate of setting out everything up. There was some initial tests, but then I think that's where they got me and start setting up from. Actually, I really enjoy setting up first Google Tag Manager, the first account, connecting to Google Analytics. So actually, it's a kind of a plain sailing. But once it comes down to when you set up and you start going and receiving early results, that's when you kind of start understanding what is working, what is not working. And because we measure all the way to the end, we can even find out later on in the stages which industries work well. Maybe it comes down once a lead MQL, once it becomes an opportunity, it's all fine. Maybe down later, down the funnel, there are differences in terms of ICP and what works, what doesn't.
Yeah. And what year would you say paid ads really started to work well? Was it like, because I imagine, as you say, like maybe the first year you're still figuring it out. At what point do you think it really took off?
I think from a get-go, there was an impact. So it was made because, I mean, it's easy to make an impact and you start from ground zero, right? Then proving positive ROI. It's again going back to Yapily, the product, the solution, open banking, there is a demand. So we were winning the deals, that the opportunities that they're creating, we were winning deals, and money was in a bank. So I was able to measure that, and the leadership were trusting performance marketing. It was proving the ROI. Sometimes it comes down not to like the marketing, but it comes down to the actual product and the technology, the company behind it. I could have been running exactly the same program, performance ads, but if a different product, different ROI, you could be winning, but if the deals are smaller, you suddenly it's too expensive. And especially if you have a higher total contract value, you might only win fewer, but the fewer that you win really make up for the spend that you put in for the last 6 months. And I think, because it's also B2B freebies, I think make a big difference. And if you're selling like smaller deals, it might not prove the ROI that it is.
Yeah, I think this is why something that annoys me a little bit in content marketing is a lot of advice out there is for SaaS companies where you kind of, the sales cycles are a lot shorter. I mean, not always, obviously, there's enterprise SaaS, but it's often a lot faster. You pay just quickly, and it's like AOV of, I mean, I don't know, £50 a month or something. And it's just those tactics and advice just does not apply to fintech often. I mean, sometimes it does, but often it doesn't apply because we're talking about 50K, 100K, a million plus often value of customers, and it's just a different ballgame. And in that world, it's not a number of leads, it's a quality that matters so much. And this is why we're always like chasing our clients. Like, we want to see the Salesforce, we want to see the spreadsheet, because we want to make sure there's actual deals coming in and that they're proper value. And it's the same applies in paid ads as well.
I remember thinking about payments industries, and I used to think it's so tough because if you do any kind of advertising, you can pay cost per click, 5, 10, whichever amount. But especially with kind of transactional, if you work dollars to euros, pounds to euros, the margin is so tiny. I used to think, how do they make a profit? But being at Yapily, where we go to kind of the B2B, the payment service providers, it does make sense because it's not kind of based on a single transaction like in B2C. And then it's okay, I can spend that time researching, targeting, planning it out because the ROI is big enough.
Yeah, exactly. Another thing I wanted to ask about is also like understanding fintech. I know you're both quite deep in fintech. I know, Edwin, you've done a few posts about your thoughts on fintech. I think you've also invested in some fintechs. Like, I don't know if that's correct. But do you feel that it's necessary in fintech marketing to be a bit of a like fintech nerd and to really, to also just to enjoy it, to like it, to want to learn more about it and be a bit of a nerd about all these payment things and all of that?
I mean, maybe I can start. Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's not essential to come from fintech to be successful in fintech. I think we've got like many people in our team that used to work in different industry and they're not doing very well. The reality is like, it's more about your personality, right? Like you need to be curious, have a genuine interest in terms of what we do. And I think for me, like, so I've worked in fintech in B2C and B2B. In B2C, it's probably less important in a sense because it's much more straight to the point. You're just selling the product. So you might have to understand maybe the benefit of the product and so on. Whereas in B2B, you need to understand the ecosystem. Like the reality is for us, like ICP are mainly financial services business, right? And you need to understand the ecosystem. On the top of that, like as an open banking provider, we do payment and data. The payment ecosystem is super, super complex. I've been in the space for like almost 10 years. I wouldn't be able to say I understand everything. It's still very complex. But this is so important from a marketing perspective, right? Because if you think about, as I said, like OICP and then the persona within the OICP, like they are experts into their domain, with which are financial services, could be payment as well. So for us as marketer, we need to understand the detail. We need to understand the trend and what's going on in the industry. I can give you an example. Like if, let's say, we want to do a campaign and targeting kind of lenders, right? We're going to target product manager and so on. we can't just be like, use open banking for XYZ reason, because it's going to help you to get better view of your potential customer, better KYC and so on. Like, we need to get a bit more deeper and really understand what's the benefit and the value almost from a technical perspective. But I think, yes, you're going to have to naturally, you don't have to come from that. As long as you're curious and interested into it, that's fine. But I think for me it's one of the key of the success and good marketing that we are doing is the expertise that translates from the content that you put together, right?
Yeah, you have to be like just interested in it, at least a bit of a nerd, a bit of a like, I like learning. And I think these people succeed in industries like fintech, which are a little bit more complex and more technical and all of that.
Yeah, and I think you need to appreciate that it is complex. Like, you're not going to come in and after a month understand everything and like, I know exactly how payment flows are working and so on. It's going to take time.
Yeah, agree. Edwin, would you call yourself a fintech nerd?
Oh, gosh. Correct.
Yeah, definitely.
I think you previously mentioned, and I probably made the post about investing in startups and fintechs. And that again came out of my curiosity to better understand, but also frustration when I was working partially as a freelancer and choosing which companies to work for and choosing the right ones, right? Because part of your success, if you work in a right company, career can really take off and have massive success. So I thought I wanted to learn what makes a good company from bad. And again, from my freelance days, I had a bit of money that I invested through CEDARS and EIS, Enterprise Investment Scheme. Just that. I learned about that and how to submit my taxes and claim from that. But that gave me an exposure eventually, I think now 100, over 140. I mean, these are tiny sums, but that's the beauty of fintech. It allows you to invest from £10 into a fintech, and then it gives you exposure to company reports and access to C-suite of the companies that you invested. So that helped me to learn and see what kind of companies fail, what kind of companies succeed. The only thing that I learned is almost still to me seems like by chance. But I've been fascinated by finance and banking from a young age. My first work experience at age of 14 was a large Northwest branch. But I didn't go straight into finance for many reasons. And actually, marketing came naturally to me. I was almost not, I did study marketing at uni, but I also studied other dual degree. And actually, then I used to come back from the summer holidays and wanted to make a bit of money or engage in some kind of venture. I was building my own websites. I was running my own Google. Yesterday I made a LinkedIn post. It was in 2008, summer holiday. I posted my first Google AdSense advert. And that's when I used to get paid myself from other people clicking on the advert. So I don't think fintech knowledge is crucial to succeed. Sometimes it actually can be an advantage, gives you a fresh perspective, unclouded by industry assumptions, because you can come, like, you might actually have a really good, strong back design or an approach to this industry, which financial services is a stuffy, old-fashioned industry. Fintech has a bit of a tech edge. But if you come, like, worked or TikTok or somewhere, and now you joined a fintech company, you can market that fintech completely different way than somebody who's been in financial services. And actually, I was kind of part of that example because I brought in this Google search, paid search, different way of thinking. And then I was initially sharing my findings on Slack where the senior leadership could see. They probably just opened their eyes to new different knowledge of how people search for a company. But once foundations are built and running smoothly, the foundations that you discussed, setting everything up, that deep industry understanding, it really starts to matter, especially the pain points, use cases in an ecosystem. And if you want to go up the gear, so you might start new, set everything up, you don't need any knowledge. But once suddenly it'll saturate the space where you can kind of build upon. And that's when you want to go into higher gear, when suddenly you need to start thinking, okay, what's a use case? What's a pain point? What's the ICP? What use case pain point will resonate with this audience? Now that starts to matter once you need that extra boost. But hopefully, if you just join from, TikTok is pretty much a fintech anyways, but if you join from completely different industry and now you work in fintech, by the time you saturate it, you should have that knowledge within a year, 2 years. And that's when you can put together the knowledge that you came with, the new knowledge that you learn, and then it's your nitro boost to 10x results even further.
Yeah, and I think being really in touch with experts on the team, like just interviewing, you get so much knowledge just from interviewing people. And this is why it's part of our process. Like just constantly talking and speaking to the experts, you learn so much as well. And that's like a big part of it as well. Cool. So I just want to end on, Yapily in the next few years. 21 to 2024, there was a big change, a big jump. What is the focus for the next, I don't know, three or 4 years? How do you see maybe your marketing changing, but also for Yapily? Like, are you going global? What are the next kind of ideas?
It's a good question. So I think for us, the fact that we kind of have control of the future, being profitable is essential, right? So how do we build on that? How do we kind of continue to grow? Like we've had a good growth trajectory that has been accelerated in 2025. The challenge is how do you maintain that in 2026, right? And I think given where we are, like the capabilities and so on, I think it's being even more focused. Like Edwin talked a lot about ICP, but this is going to be like even more and more important for us, really being hyper focused on those. How can we win more, understanding the pain point and so on. Like I think, as we said, like we have a very strong kind of inbound engine, right? But like now how do we supplement that? And the fact that we have that allow us to be even more focused. So I think in the next few months, that's going to be what we're going to try to do. Because I think in a scale up, like we kind of always want to be focused. And I think we try to be focused throughout the year, but there's always so many distractions, priorities, shifts. When you have projects that you didn't plan that you need to do and take some priorities, right? So I think for us, it's kind of how can we kind of reduce the noise around the team and be hyper focused? Because it's one thing to have amazing growth, but like it's even more challenging to maintain that growth, aren't they?
Yeah, get them used to very strong growth, but then it's like
exactly.
You have to maintain it.
Yeah, you have to maintain it. Exactly.
Yeah, amazing. Would you add anything, Edwin?
Well, we're focusing personally a lot on scaling efficiently, and pretty much gone the whole podcast without saying the word AI.
True.
I just ruined it. You are seeing how we can use these AI agents. Let's call them agents, these robots. Instead of having to, it's easier to build out process and automating the manual work to be done by an AI agent rather than hiring 100 employees, creating 100 AI agents. And also wanted to mention that in marketing that creates intellectual property that adds value to the company. And we have worked with a creative design agency, and that would help to visualize better what Yapily open banking infrastructure platform that is unique to Yapily only, and not just a bunch of stock images. Because in Fintech and open banking space, some of these companies are like cookie cutters, stock images. And apart from a funny name, there's little difference because the connections are very similar. But really creating unique IP visualization, the brand, that will really help to push these deals over the line in competition to other companies out there. So watch the space. There will be as soon as an update on art that's unique to Yapily, basically, that will help people to visualize and understand just by looking. Because it's open banking. What does open banking infrastructure platform? Tough to kind of to say and understand. But if you can visualize that easily, I think that will be really build on Yapily's intellectual property and uniqueness of the brand. That will really help us to kind of, as we scale, help us, the brand, to stand out.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think that makes sense.
Just to add on that, I think, Edwin, you mentioned AI, and it's true, we haven't mentioned it throughout the podcast.
Yeah.
I think, and it's also a lot of work that we do with you, Araminta. I think it's one of the key things is how we're going to adapt on, like basically what's the buyer journey and how AI has a play with this and the different touch points. We kind of feel like that people are going to do more and more research without looking at your website, right? So your website is going to, like, at least for us, website, that's where people like fill in a form, a contact us form and book a meeting. That's kind of our ultimate goal. Feel like a lot of more and more people are going to come to the website, and they always, I mean, it's always the case, but like they're always going to have made the decision, but it's always almost going to be a conversion point, and that's it, right? So I think kind of really understand that kind of shift of behavior and where the people are going to get the information and make the decision. I think we're going to have to adapt quite a lot. And I mean, we just got relaunched a new website, which is great, but I think we're going to have to optimize a lot of it to really maximize performance around that. I think it's going to be super interesting. Because I mean, if you look at ChatGPT is trying to be more an operating system than anything else now. So how are you going to be part of that? It's a big question.
No, it's a really interesting topic. It could be in a whole other episode. Like people are predicting maybe websites just no longer exist really and everything just happens through an LLM. I think it'll be quite a few years before that happens, but it does, as a marketer, you start to ask interesting questions where maybe we only ever market to an LLM and we'll never be able to reach the end customer. Because like it's the first time where when you create an article, you know the reader is going to read what you produced, exactly the same thing. But with an LLM, you don't know how the end customer is going to read that. So it's like for the first time as a marketer, you're actually marketing to the LLM in a way. And it's kind of this weird situation where you don't know how the end reader is going to interpret or how the LLM is going to interpret your content. So I think there is a world where marketers, maybe half of your work is influencing an LLM and half of it is influencing the customer. And that's just a very interesting concept to me. I don't know how it's going to look like, but definitely one that will be interesting. But yeah, amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This has been really fantastic to deep dive into Yapily's marketing. Congratulations again on the incredible growth and on your world-class performance marketing program. And I think it's helpful to other fintechs to see a little bit like what is possible. And especially, in paid ads that often it takes time and you have to just optimize a lot. But yeah, so thanks so much for coming on. It's been fantastic.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. You can find show notes and information about guests at fintechmarketinghub.com/podcast. And finally, huge thanks to Orama.tv for producing this podcast. We look forward to having you on our next episode.